Okay, Luke, let's move on to the hot topic in different Magic spaces right now. So a few weeks ago, the Utah Jazz moved on from their all-star Defensive Player of the Year center Rudy Gobert. And as soon as that move happened, there was speculation that now the Jazz are going to kind of transition into a rebuild, and they may want to move on from Donovan Mitchell. And this past week, the reports came out that the Utah Jazz are listening to offers for Donovan Mitchell. Not that they are going to trade him, but that they are listening to offers. Everyone thinks that it's going to be either New York or New York Knicks or the Miami Heat. The Knicks obviously have been hurting for a superstar since literally Carmelo Anthony. And every single time a star becomes available, Knicks fans and NBA Twitter convinces themselves that they are going to acquire said superstar, whether it's free agency, trades, whatever. And then the Miami Heat, obviously, they're talking themselves into the fact that they're like one more all-star caliber player away from competing for a title, which there is some merit to that conversation. However, people have noticed, the package that the Minnesota Timberwolves made for Rudy Gobert, and they think that the Magic could make a similar offer. The Utah Jazz, if they are transitioning to a rebuild, are going to be looking for two things: young talent and an assortment of draft picks. The Magic have both of those that they could offer. Bill Simmons, on his podcast, argued that the Magic actually have like the best package to offer the Utah Jazz if they were trading for Donovan Mitchell. Now, when we're talking about these trades, Luke, to make the money work out, usually it's some kind of combination of Jonathan Isaac, Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs, and then picks. I think Bill Simmons, he said Isaac, Suggs, Cole, 3 first-round picks, and 2 potential pick swaps. So 3 good young players and potentially up to 5 first-round draft picks. And to that, I say hell no to that particular offer. What do you think? I've been just brewing on this for a few days. I could go on and on about this. What do you think about the Magic potentially trading for Donovan Mitchell?
I'm torn about it, but I know I lean towards the don't do it. I lean toward the let's just see what happens. Can we just be patient? Continue to be patient. Not rush this. And like you said about the Knicks, they always want that superstar. It was kind of like with things that come out during the season, like, oh, he's a Laker, right? Like people already try to put people on certain teams, and the Knicks are absolutely one of those teams that do that. We saw that with Kevin Durant, and then come to find out they didn't even have a conversation. So there's that. But I think it's tough because Donovan Mitchell is still relatively young, right? He's 25 years old, going to be 26 years old this year when he plays. He's got, what do you want to say? Like 30 years old, like probably 3-4 more seasons at like a really great level. What I'll say is he made an all-star game a couple seasons ago and has since kind of felt like he's at his ceiling, basically. His statistics have remained relatively the same
he's
his last couple seasons.
He's a 3-time All-Star. We just want to clarify that. Each of the last 3 seasons, he's been an All-Star.
He's
not exactly falling off.
No, he's not falling off, but he's staying relatively... he's not... My point is, he's not going, superstar. He is an all-star, and he's a great player, and could be a number 1 option on a, top-level team like he has been with the Jazz, right? So... we'll see, but I am very hesitant to say that I would trade that many assets in order to make that happen. Bill Simmons also pointed out on the podcast that the Jazz probably want to do it with the Knicks, especially because of their picks, because they have proved to be incompetent even when given nice things. Granted, you can say things about the Magic as well. The Magic have not been great the last... 12 years. So there is that argument as well, that the Jazz would want to get picks from us because of that. But I think what we have that the Knicks don't is just even more young promising guys. I would be okay with I don't know, man. Like, as far as a package does go, I am not a trade expert, so don't even try to match money on me. I don't care. I don't have a clue. So, but what I will say, as far as guys that like I'm okay parting with, I'm okay with Suggs and Cole, and you could probably talk me into J.I. I think that you have to lower the amount of picks you're giving them. I don't really want to give them that many picks. Along with pick swaps, I'm good on that. So I don't know what my price tag is right now for Donovan Mitchell. I think I'm probably closer to it than you are. But just because I do think that, people are like, oh, well, do you want to rise to like just be mediocre? Like you'll be like a playoff team, but like at what cost, right? Like how, but what I say is that these young guys on our team will just continue to get better anyway. And in 3 years, wouldn't surprise me if this team is a top team in the East with Donovan Mitchell. So even with giving away whatever players you want and maybe the 3 that I listed. So I really don't know what my price point is for Donovan Mitchell, but I would be listening maybe a little bit more than you.
So before I get into why I don't think it's the right move for the Magic, what I'll say is I probably think we're in the same boat. Like Suggs, Jonathan Isaac, Cole Anthony, and like maybe 2 first-round picks, I would really be listening at that point if that's the offer. Now, when we start talking about 4 or 5 first-round picks, that's where I'm like, okay, like we need to kind of draw the line. And at some point, we also need to come back to normalcy. Like in the 2016 offseason where we saw the cap spike, and all of a sudden Bismack Biyombo was getting $80 million contracts. Evan Fournier got a fifth-year player option as well as $17 million a year. And then now we've seen guys like kind of come back to normal in terms of kind of those mid-tier guys. Like Evan Fournier now, sure, is making close to $20 million a year, but he's a much better player now than he was in let's say, 2016. Right. At some point, the trade market and the value for these guys has to come back down, because giving up 4 young players and 5 first-round picks like the Minnesota Timberwolves did, that's just lunacy, especially for Rudy Gobert. Like, if it was Kevin Durant or Giannis or Jokic, Steph, we'd be like, okay, you gave up a lot, kind of like the Lakers did to get Anthony Davis. You gave up a lot, but if you win a title, it's all worth it. Now, they won the one title the Lakers did in 2020. People want to talk revisionist history, whether or not they should have traded for Anthony Davis. I would do almost anything for the Magic to have a championship. If you came to me and you said, like, we are going to take your right arm, but we will guarantee you the Magic are going to win a championship. And when it comes to these hypotheticals, I'm a big like quality of life guy. Like, money isn't necessarily worth my quality of life. I would really entertain my right arm for an Orlando Magic championship. So if you're guaranteeing me that that's going to happen, there's almost not a deal that I wouldn't make. There is no deal I wouldn't make if that was the guarantee. So the Lakers did the right thing by trading for Anthony Davis. They won a freaking title. Let's put that argument to bed.
You're giving up a right arm.
I'm a lefty, so I'm giving up my right arm. I don't know that I would give up my left arm, but my right arm, you could probably have it for an Orlando Magic championship.
Interesting. I'd have to think about what my hypothetical, like, where do I draw the line as far as like what,
think about it. We'll come back to it. Whether it's this episode, we've got a long off season to fill. I'll can definitely come back to that hypothetical.
What would I do for a championship? Yeah, okay.
Please do. So, like I said, if it was just young players, or even if it was just, well, you'd have to include players to make the money work, but even if it was just picks, like, obviously, like, let's go ahead and do that. I draw the line at really good young players that we're big fans of and a ton of picks for Donovan Mitchell. Now, why do I feel like Donovan Mitchell may not really be what the Magic are looking for and what they're looking to build around? So, first of all, you just look at the size, 6'1". Now, he does have a crazy positive wingspan. 6'1" guy with a 6'10" wingspan. Arms are very, very long.
Long boy.
So, Jeff might see that and be like, okay, I can work with this. However, we've seen a history of these smaller guards as they get older start to have some health issues. We've seen it with guys like Dwayne Wade. This has just happened time and time again. Smaller guys, as they age, the more and more they hit the floor, the more miles they get on them, they just kind of start to break down. Now, let's talk about the way that the Magic are looking to play. And some of this is admittedly going to be some numbers that are going to just kind of help drive the narrative that I'm trying to push here, the propaganda here. Pace, space, and the pass, and defense. Just the way the Magic have been constructing this roster since they have started to rebuild. So Donovan Mitchell, last season, I believe, was a 35% three-point shooter. So league average, given the amount of attempts, almost 10 attempts a game for Donovan Mitchell, 35% is very respectable based on that number of three-point attempts. So the space, I will give it to him. He's got the shot-making ability. That's there. But let's talk about pace. The Magic want to play with a lot of pace, Luke. When you are constructing your offense, especially if you're a contender, you construct your offense around your very best player. For the Utah Jazz, it was Donovan Mitchell. Do you know where the Utah Jazz ranked last season in terms of pace? So pace is measured by the amount of possessions that you would have in a 48-minute game. The Utah Jazz ranked in the bottom 10 teams in the league, 97.5 possessions per 48 minutes. So they play with very low pace. My guess is attributing some of that to Donovan Mitchell. Let's talk about the pass. Okay, Donovan Mitchell averaged, 5.3 assists per game. The Utah Jazz were fourth in assists as a team last year. So far, Donovan Mitchell isn't really making the case for he's making the case for space. He's not really making the case for pace or the pass. In terms of defense, I have a list here of all guards in the NBA who played over 40 games last season, and I have this sorted by their defended field goal percentage. So this is possessions where they were the closest defender. How did opponents fare in terms of their field goal percentage? Out of 183 players, if we start with the absolute worst defensive guard in the league, last year it was DJ Augustine, okay? At 83, if we go 22 spots, so now we're sitting at 161, we have Donovan Mitchell at 49.6% defended field goal percentage. So out of all guards who played 40 games or more last season, Donovan Mitchell's defended field goal percentage was 161st. Most people don't think that he's a good defender. I wanted to look up those stats to get a little bit more context in terms of that. Admittedly, I don't watch a ton of the Utah Jazz, but we have seen Donovan Mitchell a turnstile, especially in the playoffs. Short, 6'1" guard, not really... his play so far has not really been indicative of his teams playing with a ton of pace, not a ton of passing, and he's not a great defender. That mixed with the Magic talking about we're going to be patient. We're not going to rush back to the middle. We're not going to rush this rebuild. I think they're big fans of the young talent they've acquired to this point. For all of those reasons, I don't see them pushing their chips in for Donovan Mitchell. And there will be another all-star that becomes available. We see this every single year. This season, it was almost potentially DeAndre Ayton, although he's not an all-star. Guy started in an NBA Finals. Kevin Durant, 2 years into his contract with the Brooklyn Nets, he wants out. There was rumors that Kyrie Irving wanted out, that he was going to choose not to opt into that last year player option and become a free agent. Now Donovan Mitchell, after Rudy Gobert was traded, Donovan Mitchell's unhappy now. He wants out. We see this happen almost every single offseason. Donovan Mitchell is not going to be the Magic's last opportunity to push the chips that they have in for a talent of his level. The last thing that I'll say is, as good as Donovan Mitchell is, I don't think he can be the best player on a contender. If you're looking to win a championship, obviously the Utah Jazz have been contenders, but they have not made it very far into the playoffs, so how can you really say they're contenders? I see Donovan Mitchell as like the highest level, second best guy that you can have on an NBA team if you're looking to contend for a title.
Yeah, so kind of a rebuttal there as far as Donovan Mitchell goes, specifically to like the pass. To be fair, he had like 5 assists a game, and let's see his turnover margin. Let's see, he had 5.3 assists and 3 turnovers a game. If he's your shooting guard, I don't care. Like, that's good. Like that is fine to me. I don't mind that at all. Defensively, you can argue the Magic could hide him. But I will say that a lot of it hinges on who you're giving away in that trade. You're not getting to just add Donovan Mitchell to this current roster. You are trading away defensive pieces, essentially, if you're trading away guys like Suggs and J.I. especially. So, that being said, I would like to say you could hide him defensively, but because I don't know what the return the Jazz would be getting, I can't say that for certain. So, as far as the pass goes for me, that's fine. He's great. The space goes for me. He shoots 10 threes a game. We have no problem spacing the floor. I will say defensively, I can't say that he'd be great, and so I really don't know. And then pace, obviously, you brought up those advanced stats there, which obviously show that he is not somebody that is going to push the ball necessarily. And it could have been the system, but it could be that they were building that team around him, like you said, and that's just not his style, is to push. So, I don't know. I really don't know as far as Donovan Mitchell does go, but that's kind of my 2 cents there to the argument.
Well, I think there's other things like that you can think of, and if you're again, I put together these stats to push forward the narrative that I don't think we should trade for Donovan Mitchell.
Right.
That being said, you have an older guard in Mike Conley. You have Rudy Gobert, who's not a guy that's going to play in transition a ton. Bojan Bogdanovic. Like, these are not guys who are really pushing the pace on a team. So it doesn't make sense for Donovan to push the break and then be playing 1-on-5. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. What I think is the biggest argument against trading for Donovan Mitchell is that it completely changes the type of team that we've spent the last now 2 years building. You go from being a defensive-minded team. Yes, you add Paolo Banchero, who I think can be a good defender, and now you're really just putting all of your chips on Paolo Banchero and Donovan Mitchell carrying you to a championship offensively, because they're not defensive juggernauts by any means. And to your point, if you're including Jalen Suggs and Jonathan Isaac in a trade for Donovan Mitchell, that is significantly lowering your defensive ceiling and your floor for that point as well. So if you're trading those guys away for Donovan Mitchell, all of a sudden you're not really that much of a defensive-oriented team.
Yeah. I think, like I said, I still lean where I lean, which is, I don't care for us to trade for Donovan Mitchell by any means. So we'll see how it plays out. I don't expect it to happen. I know you don't expect it to happen. We will let the Knicks and the Heat fight over the current popular superstar.
And I think you said this. I'm totally fine just waiting and figuring out what we have.
Right.
Let's wait 1 more year or even 2 more years. Like if the guy doesn't become available this year, as long as everyone improves to a certain extent this season, wait a year. If you have to wait another 2 years before you say, okay, now we are ready to go and acquire a guy, and now we're ready to make the next step. At the end of this year, at the latest, the end of next year, the Magic should really be reevaluating everything and say, okay, what does this team need? What kind of guy does that look like? How do we get that kind of guy to Orlando? And then when the opportunity presents itself, you need to be as aggressive as you need to get that guy here.
Yep. Patient then, why not be patient now? Like, you've been patient in the past here. This front office has been, I don't see them jumping to fix something that is clearly something that they've laid out in a full-on plan for a very long time. Like I've said before, I feel like they've just got this huge sheet where they just have all their master plans written out, and I don't see Donovan Mitchell in those plans.
Hopefully not a whiteboard, right?
No, probably not. No revealing our plans there on the whiteboard.